we have a very, very special panel at the end. This is what makes it very special, the screening. It's not just about throwing a movie out here for you guys to watch and leave home, feeling maybe perhaps frustrated, angry, and hopeless and powerless. It's about bringing you additional hope and maybe local sustainable solutions. So we have an amazing panel here. Mark McAfee, who's come from Fresno, who's from our amazing teacher, and I'll introduce him more properly after the end of the movie. We have Dale Jaffe, who's not here yet. He's the sustainability director from Hugo's Restaurant. And what he's going to share with you is his knowledge from the restaurant side. What can we do after we leave this place? Where can we go? What can we eat? So you feel empowered, so you know what options you have, what questions to ask from the restaurants you go visiting. We have Davey. How do I describe him? He plays a powerful role. He is a seed saver. And you may think, oh, that's such a small little task. That is not. Once you see the movie, once you find out a little bit more about the process of genetically modified organisms and the purpose behind it, you'll understand the power behind saving seeds. And he's going to be here talking to us about that. And we're going to have Dr. Mary Tobin, she's an acupuncturist, who's going to be sharing her side of her clinical practice and what she's seen from a patient's perspective and what she's been doing, what she's discovered, and how it's helping her patients. So I hope that brings some light to that issue. I wanted to share with you the intention of today and why I created this space to bring you guys all together. We in America have no idea what we're truly eating. 49 countries in this world, including China, know if their food is artificially modified with genetically modified ingredients. Yet, here in America, for over 15 years, we've been like a guinea pig, not knowing what we're eating. It's a big experiment on us. Then the question becomes, how do we know where to look to find out what's really in our food? I hope by the end of the movie screening, you will find the importance of labeling. And we have the opportunity to vote in California on November 6th. And you can pick up more information from the gals over there about the campaign if you wish to know a little bit more about that. It would be so much easier for me just to set up a movie and have you guys watch it and just go wrap it up. Like I said, I don't know about you, but I watch a lot of documentaries, and a lot of times topics that I'm watching, if I'm not familiar with it, it makes me feel frustrated or angry, upset, and it makes me feel more hopeless and less empowered, and which is not the feeling I want you guys to have afterwards. So I hope after the end of the movie, after you see what kind of options we have over here on the raffle table, by the way, feel free to put in your offer for the raffles. I'm going to be giving out the prizes at the end of the movie, and we'll gauge it and see if it should be right after the movie or right after the panel. We'll gauge it. If people have to leave, then you can voice your concerns. We can do the raffle right after the movie. I'm trying to see what else is there. I think that's it. Without further ado, let's start the movie. Enjoy yourself. I wanted to also announce that October 5th, when I had the movie screening at Westlake Village, IoT, Institute for Responsible Technology, where Jeffrey Smith is the director for that institute, wanted to raise $20,000 to be able to screen the movie for free online. And I'm happy to say we're able to do that, and the movie's offered. Before you leave, I'm not saying leave now, but before you leave, if you haven't gotten it, there's a sheet listing of local vendors that practice the same movie. At the bottom also, it has a link to the movie. Pass it on to your friends. This is absolutely important information. And may I just say, Mark McAfee from Organic Pastures end of the loop of that, the budget necessary to offer the movie for free. So thank you so much. And I only have a few copies of Roulette, Scientists Under Attack, and another movie for sale in case you want it. Just talk to me and I'll offer it to you outside. Now, just to let you know, it is very important, I think, to connect the pieces together, because it's very important. In order to feel empowered, you need to know where you can go, what you can do about this. So I wanted to thank the vendors who were participating, and the vendors who are on the raffle table, just so you know, they all somehow practice sustainably. Are we all perfect? No. Do we do things perfectly at home? No. But they're going extreme lengths to make it happen for you. So do take a look at them. I want to mention to you, for instance, if you're wondering, if you're not omnivore, if you want to get beef, where do you get your beef? There's many places, but Day Best Beef Ever is a great source, local grass-fed beef, and you can get that at Pasadena Farmers Market. And last is Natural Foods and Vitamin Store. They're not familiar with this area, but I think they have one 15-20 minutes away from here. You can look it up, and again, it's on the sheet. Hugo's, amazing restaurant. They offer lots of options, not only GMO-free ingredients, but how many of us have gluten intolerance, right? We have vegans, we have vegetarians, we have omnivores, so it satisfies a lot of needs. Organic Pastures. Organic Pastures offers raw milk products from grass-fed cows. That's a novelty. This is what our grandparents did, actually, feed us, milk from grass-fed cows, not this pasteurized, homogenized, dead food that you go in the store, albeit organic, it's still dead food. Organic Pastures offer raw live enzymes if you're eating dairy. Sharky's is another option if you guys wanted to look into like a fast food. They have a lot of organic options on their menu. So that's food for thought. Now, piece de resistance. Wanted to introduce to you the panel who's going to be coming up here. First up is Mark McAfee from Organic Pastures. And Mark is an amazing person. His family has been into farm dairy since the 1950s. And he practices nature-friendly farm practices. I'm sure he'll be able to tell you a little bit more about it if you're interested. And he produces 100% organic raw dairy, which has tremendous benefits. And we're very fortunate to have him here. He flew all the way from Fresno out here just for this. And he's going to share with us lots of science behind developing friendly bacteria in the intestine. And he can talk to us about how to do that with dairy, fermented foods and whatnot. So it's absolutely powerful. And this is not only just in general, just fermented foods in general are great, but this actually helps you combat all these toxins that we're bombarded with. So this is one additional thing you can do that's very simple and yet very powerful. Next, we have Dale Jaffe. Is he inside the room? Dale? Still outside? Can somebody get Dale Jaffe? Oh, there you are. Hello. He is sustainability director for Hugo's Restaurant, and he will share with us tremendous information about his side of the business and what we can do as consumers going into the restaurants, what we can ask for, what can we do, even if it's not Hugo's, what can we do when we go to a restaurant to look out for the ingredients so that we can choose the best option out there for us. So thank you so much, Dale. Next we have Davey. Davey. There we are. Davey is local experts on different techniques and technologies. If you don't mind, I'm reading this off because it's lengthy, I want to get through it. He worked at the Los Angeles County Arboretum and Ranch at the Huntington Library. He's developing community organized group projects on the preservation, promotion, and propagation of bioregional food producing seeds. And it is absolutely important, so I'd love to hear what he has to say about that. Thank you, Davey. And we're very privileged to also have Dr. Mary Turbin. She's an acupuncturist. Thank you so much for coming. This is interesting. I found out about Dr. Turbin. When her children graduated from high school, right? She shifted careers from owning a successful plastic manufacturing company to a career in holistic medicine. She earned her bachelor's in holistic medicine, master's in oriental medicine, and doctorate in holistic medicine, and became licensed with the California State Board of Acupuncture as a licensed acupuncturist. What she'll bring to the table is her clinical observation of what she's seen with patients and how it has changed over the years, and what she has done, and what kind of difference it has made. So hopefully this will shed a light on that. So without further ado, welcome. Thank you so much. Meg is going to be having microphone passed around. If you have any questions, please address it to them. We can just get started, or have them speak if you like. If you don't have any questions, and as it comes, please raise your hand. We'll get you the microphone. Yeah, if you guys want to go and submit your chance for the Maxim Prize, go ahead. Otherwise, soon after, we're going to be announcing our raffle winners. Okay? Any questions? I have a question mark.
A question mark.
So how eating what you're talking about, fermented food, is going to help us? And how do you prove that scientifically?
Carolyn, thank you so much for having us down here today. And this is great. I'm very honored to sit with all these wonderful people here. And I want to start my comment by saying that the reason we all sit here today is because we're very concerned, I can assume this amongst all of us, very concerned about the next generation, about children, and the welfare of humanity going forward. It's a broad statement, but it's a very heartfelt statement. And every time that I watch this movie, and I've seen it several times now, I'm just taken back by what else could I say better than what's already been said. I mean, this is a very powerful, very well-researched documentary by some really solid people here that really speaks to the issues. I just want to share, basically from my perspective, being an organic raw milk dairyman, selling raw milk in 400 stores for the last 13 years, that it's all about the gut. Your health is all about your gut. When your gut's well, you're well. That may be a generalized statement, but it's really true. Your gut is such a huge organism. It has such an incredibly wonderful biodiversity of this rainforest within that's generally ignored by food producers in the United States, or regulatory agencies in the United States, and most Western medicine in the United States. It's just generally ignored. But when it's well, you're well. My experience has been, from my narrow area of agriculture, which is organic raw milk, is that when people fix their gut with good biodiversity, good fats, good enzymes, the bacteria, obviously, the biodiversity, mineral availability, the proteins, in unmodified original form, 160 million years to get milk right on Earth. A heck of an evolutionary process for mammals to create this incredibly important, valuable food, an optimal food to optimally increase the chances of life and survival and immune system development in young mammals, humans included. Cows, calves, goats, sheep, horses, humans, we're all mammals. We share milk from our mothers. So what I've seen is those people that are walking around and having all these terrible immune system problems with immune depression, associated with allergies and eczema and all these problems with asthma, when they fix their gut, these things generally go away. Inflammation and infection generally go away in their bodies. Right now we have a major problem in America with Crohn's disease, celiac disease, irritable bowel syndrome, all these immune system problems, permeability in the gut, allergies, the food particles getting into the bloodstream and causing allergic reactions, as we heard. These are all gut problems. And so I am very proud. I spent 17 years as a certified paramedic in the medical paradigm, responding to 911 calls and people sweeping them off the hospital. And now I'm privileged to be able to produce a food which is actually one of the ultimate gut repair foods, along with other whole, unprocessed foods and fermented foods. And these are the foods of our great-grandparents. In America today, we see very few raw foods that are not processed in some way, especially dairy that's highly processed to get a long shelf life. Your gut is not a shelf. Your gut is a place where things ferment and break down into small little pieces that can be utilized in our bodies. So if you have a gut problem, you should really look into the biodiversity of gut flora and all the whole foods you're missing in your diet. And when you put those whole foods back in your diet, the farmer's market type foods, the non-GMO, non-sprayed, non-antibiotic, whole new food in your diet. And you can even add in your raw milk. Have lactose intolerance? Try it. You probably won't have it with raw milk because it has the enzymes and beneficial bacteria that up to 50% of the population doesn't have in their gut anymore and can drink raw milk very easily. It's a worthy experience to try that. If you have allergies, if you were to take out your smartphone today and Google the most allergenic food in America, #1 on the FDA website, pasteurized milk. Yet raw milk is not allergenic. It stabilizes mast cells. Keeps the histamine response from occurring. I'll close my comments by just commenting on something I find absolutely just revolting. It's a personal experience I had in the last week. I'm working very closely with PhD researchers at the UC Davis Milk Genome Consortium project, which is an international multi-center research to look at what milk's all about, breast milk, ovine milk. They're trying to look for the medical claims that they can have on pasteurized milk. This is all funded by Got Milk. And there's some NIH money and some FDA money and some money there. But it's interesting. They got an email this last week from the FDA that says, stop publishing, stop promoting, and take immediately out of public view the Splash newsletter. Now, what's the Splash newsletter? Well, at the Milk Genome Project, they actually publish their findings of what they're finding in raw breast milk from whatever source they're getting it from, whether it's cow monkeys or humans or cows. Because what they're finding is, stop processing the milk. You're destroying its value. You're changing the proteins. You're destroying the enzymes. You're doing all these terrible things to milk. Less processing. That's where the value is at. The FDA absolutely went berserk and did not want this to be seen in the public view. So they are so anti-science and so corrupt and so sick, so tilted towards greed, human need has been completely denied. And that's just a story. If anybody think you love your FDA, well, think twice. It's a real concern. So vote yes on 37. Get to know your farmer, get to know your food, eat whole food nutrition, and then we'll take care of the next generation. Thank you. Is there any questions? No, I don't want to be the mic hog here. We've got other professionals to listen to. Oh, great question. There were 2 lawsuits in Connecticut back in 2007 or 8. A couple kids got sick from E. coli, 15787, and they've fully recovered, but the lawsuit was against Whole Foods as a distributor of raw milk nationally. And this was in Connecticut, it had nothing to do with California. And the decision to take all raw milk out of Whole Foods was made in Austin, Texas, not in California. And in Texas, there's no raw milk sold in stores. So they didn't have a care in the world about, who cares about California, that country out by the Pacific Ocean. And as a result, 55 stores and Whole Foods discontinued raw milk. But what was interesting, we went to our Facebook relationships and asked the people, where would you like to have milk where you can't get it in Whole Foods anymore? And they told us about the mom and pops that had been displaced by Whole Foods. And that year, after Whole Foods kicked us out, we sold about 20% more raw milk than we did the previous year because the price point was lower and people came from Whole Foods to the mom and pops that were very upset by being displaced by Whole Foods. So fear not, persistence, the people always prevail. The truth will be there. I often say, they may have the guns and the money, but I got the truth and the moms.
I actually have 2 questions. One, you see all those diseases out there and symptoms and all that. I've had pretty much every single one of them. Years of going to doctors. It's been a really horrible experience. I don't know how to cook. I go into restaurants and eat all the time. And I only recently found out about GMOs and switched to organic, and about 95% of my symptoms have all gone away. But I have 2 difficult problems, which lead to my 2 questions. One is, since I eat at restaurants all the time, even the organic ones advertised as organic, I go there and it's like one organic ingredient with a bunch of GMO dressing poured all over it. How do I find, you know, a place that actually serves a whole organic meal someplace? And the other question is how do I find a doctor to go to if you're getting GMO symptoms?
Well, it's easy for me to answer the first part of that question, which is you can go to Hugo's restaurant and you can have a GMO-free meal. We've been working on this for about 2 years, and I understand when you say you could be eating something that is essentially GMO-free, and then they're going to pour salad dressing all over it that is made with canola oil that's not GMO. And in fact, there are restaurants out there, I'm not going to point fingers, but it's not hard to figure out, that are making claims. There's a Mexican restaurant or a chain that is saying they have non-GMO corn chips. What they fail to mention is they're frying them in traditional oil. So this would be a case of you know, what we know as greenwashing in the industry, where we maybe tell part of the truth that makes things look good, and we neglect to mention other aspects that may not be giving us the information, the answers that we're looking for, or that we want. But I'm proud to say that Hugo's does a very good job. I would say that Hugo's is probably about 99% GMO free. And the reason I say 99 is because we're still sourcing cornstarch, which we hardly use at all, but we're probably just days or a week or so away from replacing the current product we're using. But that said too, that I still am not of the belief that everything that is declared to be non-GMO is in fact non-GMO. I think a certain amount of skepticism is probably in order, especially if you have a health risk or a health challenge. That you know, the best thing to do would be to cook at home. So you may want to start playing around in your kitchen one of these days. And there's a lot of resources out there that can make it fun, and I think the rewards are tremendous. But as far as restaurants go, Hugo's does an amazing job, and I say that as someone who eats there frequently, and there are not very many restaurants that I eat at. Most of the time I am cooking at home, because I have a lot of criteria that I am trying to meet, and the easiest way to do that is in your own home. I might also suggest, in the nicest way possible, that you ask your grocer and your restaurateurs, let them know that you're looking for foods that are GMO-free. And they may look at you like you're crazy, but eventually, if enough people ask them, they're going to respond. It's just the way the market works. People will get what they want and what they need. So, you know, again, Carolyn said that at Hugo's, we accommodate a lot of different people. In fact, some, you know, there are some vegans, for example, who won't eat at Hugo's because we prepare meat there. So we're not going to perfectly satisfy any one element of the population, but we're doing our best there so people can come together who may have no concerns for whether they're eating a GMO-free diet or a gluten-free diet or a vegan diet, and they can sit down and eat with somebody who is eating a gluten-free diet or a vegan diet or a pure plant-based diet prepared without any unnecessary fats. These things are happening there. So it's knowledge. That's what this is about. That's what watching this film is about, is you're increasing, expanding your knowledge so you can go out and ask more questions, so you can learn more, and you can share that information with people who you care about and you love. And so my specialty here would really be about the food, about the restaurants. You know, I've spent years sourcing ingredients for Hugo's and other companies, and I'm happy to say more restaurants are showing some interest now. It's a good business model to take care of all people, not just people who don't care about their health.
And I want to respond a little bit to the second part of your question. You bring up an excellent point in that you said you have a lot of health issues, and they weren't getting resolved until you really started looking at what you're eating. And that is, I hope everybody here got that, because how many of you, before you came in, were already very well informed and were trying to eat, you know, basically a non-processed GMO-free diet before you came in? Okay, about half of you. And then how many of you now are completely committed to eating a non-processed GMO-free diet? I really should see everybody's hand up right now. And that is the point. In my practice, I started out and I got through all my studies, and I thought if I put needles in the right places and take them out and do everything exactly right, I should get the exact same textbook response that they had when they created these books 3,000 years ago. And I didn't, and it's for the very reason you mentioned. It's because the foods we're eating are not the same as the foods we had years ago. Even 100 years ago, the foods we're eating now are completely different. And so we need to be extremely careful and extremely proactive, because the food industry is designed to produce food that they can make money selling, that'll look good and taste good. They're not concerned about our nutrition whatsoever. And regardless of what the health issue, the two health issues that I see just skyrocketing. You mentioned the intestinal issue. I mean, that's huge. There used to be no intestinal problems, and then, like you mentioned, there's the IBS and the Crohn's and celiac disease and all of these type of things that really didn't exist before. We're having a huge amount of infertility, which the movie pointed out. But obesity is huge. It is going to bankrupt our country unless we get it under control. They recently did an HBO special, and you can go online. It's HBO, theweightofthenation.com. They will send you a free movie. It's a 4-part series, and there's no charge. That's how bad it is. They want the public to start helping with this, because over 65% of Americans are overweight or obese. 65%. 40% of our children are overweight or obese. That's outrageous. And the fallout from that are our 2 largest causes of death are completely preventable. Heart disease and cancer if people eat healthy. The other thing that's skyrocketing is diabetes, completely related to our diet. And so this movie points out, while we think we're eating healthy and we're trying our best, we're not really able to eat healthy unless you do real gymnastics to try to find healthy food. And the places like Hugo's that are popping up are really catering to that. And so any restaurants that you can find that are really trying to produce healthy food, frequent those type of restaurants. And if you go to other restaurants, ask them, do you have GMOs in your menu? And I can promise you, they're going to look at you like, GMO? They got a weird woman over there asking about GMOs. We don't know what she's talking about. But that used to be the case years ago when people would ask about gluten. So it's just a matter of becoming informed, asking the questions, and eventually it'll get there. Or you were going to ask something else? And here's why that's very humorous, because MDs get virtually no nutrition. So if you're going to look at your doctor for nutrition, you're barking up the wrong tree. They're taught, how to perform surgical operations and how to use pharmacology. That's what they're taught. So to go for them for nutrition, you're not even in their realm of possibilities. So what you need to find you'll need your MD for whatever you're doing with your MD, but you're also almost going to have to find some type of a holistic care practitioner. Somebody who does nutrition, acupuncturists, obviously I think are a great place to start. But, and that's not because acupuncturists all do nutrition, but if you have somebody who really has gotten involved in whatever practice they're practicing, it all will come around to nutrition, and then they will be very well informed. So try to, if you tell me where you are, I can even try and, you're right in this area, I'll get some information to you specifically and try to find some people in your area, because it is, and we do need to, it's all found through word of mouth, those type of practitioners, but they are definitely out there, and when you find them, they're really, really good. I hope that answered that question.
This is sorry. Okay. I want to thank everybody that put this on today. I'm so happy to be here, and this was a great movie to watch, and I'm so grateful to all the people on the panel that opted to show up today. I'm very impressed that you would come out on a Sunday, and particularly for those who came far. I really appreciate your being here. And I have two questions actually. One is about fermented food, even though you didn't speak to that at all. I've been so ingrained to go with alkaline, reducing alkaline in the system, et cetera, and it's my understanding, particularly with kombucha and things, different fermented foods, that it's an acidic environment. And what is the benefit of that? Even though I get the probiotic point, my friend and I were having a discussion about this last week. Why would one want acidic foods going into the body in the fermented realm? And also, I found out recently, and I'm wondering if anybody can verify this, that it's possible to have an organic label on something that maybe has been grown in an organic way, but started out with GMO seeds that's not labeled. I don't know if that's correct or incorrect, so those two questions could go to whoever can answer them. And thanks again.
I'll start with the second half of the question. As far as I recall from what I read, I'm not a representative of any organization that certifies organic, but everything that I read online says that according to the guidelines of being certified organic, you cannot have genetically engineered either ingredients or seeds. That's all I know. I'm sure maybe Mark knows more.
Under the USDA program, no GMOs whatsoever are supposed to be involved with organic production. So not in the feedstuffs or in the seeds or anything. In fact, when we plant, we have to plant non-GMO seeds and to be verified. And also non-coated, non-pesticide laden seeds as well. So there's a lot of restrictions on that, and we have to show that to our certifiers every year. As far as your pH thing is concerned, it's interesting. I don't take a lot of that alkaline acidity thing. I don't take a lot of that. I'm not a medical practitioner, but I certainly hang out with a lot of them. And it's interesting how the physiology of the body works really, really well when you start eating whole food nutrition in fermented form and in minimally processed form. And the whole idea of the alkalinity versus acidosis in the body, it's interesting because if you do measurements in situ, or you try to do measurements in a petri dish, you can't reproduce what's actually going on in the body. It's too complex to do so. You can't take a bacteria out and say, okay, what's that bacteria do, when the bacteria actually is working within the matrix of a whole environment in the body. They can't be measured outside of the body. So my whole perspective on this is this. When you ferment foods, you partially pre-digest the food. That was the way our great-great-grandparents held their food, because they didn't have refrigeration. So lactofermentation was a very, very universally practiced form around the world to hold your vegetables, hold your meat, hold your milk. Milk was not eaten, except for farmers, in raw, fresh form. It was mostly in yogurts, probiotic yogurts and kefirs around the world. And those are pH of 3.8, fairly high acidotic, but they're pathogen-free because they're acidotic. They have a long shelf life because they're acidotic. They also are pre-digested, easy to digest because they're acidotic. And they also give extreme good health benefits because of that. And that's not an alkaline food. It's an acidotic food, but it matches beautifully with the pH of the body. The Bulgarians, gosh, the area there in World War I was identified as the Centurion area in Bulgaria was to be 100 years old. They're eating raw goat's milk, raw everything, all this wonderful raw unprocessed fermented foods and yogurts. So I don't buy into that so much. I think we're looking at a subpart of something that's a much greater picture. So you want to address that a little bit?
The point he makes is excellent. The one thing you want to look at is how something is processed. If you can get it as close to its real form as possible. Like, for example, apple juice. My husband came home with organic, pasteurized apple juice. And I was like, He's like, I did the best I could. And it's true, he did the best he could. But I know that, and I showed him, I actually just left, we opened it, had some of it, and I left it sit on the counter for months. Nothing grew in there. No mold, nothing. It was organic. He did the best he could. But that's the point. When we process things so that they can sit on the shelf and you can just buy them off the shelf, they're altering how it is. If it can't grow mold, it's not going to provide energy for my body. And so what you want to do is, when you read a label, organic, non-organic, of course you want to go with organic, but what you really want to do is look at your labels not so much for the sodium content, the fat content, etc., but what are the ingredients? If it says, if the word hydrogenated in there, don't even touch it, because that means that they've taken an extra hydrogen atom and added it to a liquid so that it would never to turn a liquid oil into a solid. That's what margarine is, for example. So in other words, when you eat margarine, you're not really eating a food anymore. And you know it's not really a food. If you let margarine sit out on your counter, it's not going to melt and it's never going to turn rancid. If something is never going to melt, never going to turn rancid, it's not a food anymore. You put butter out on your counter, it'll melt and it'll eventually not taste very good because it's able to rot. Same thing with the milk. If you let raw milk, it can actually sour. If you take your regular pasteurized milk and you leave it out, and if you've ever done that, it's not sour milk, it is rotten. You can tell there's a big difference. So look at how your foods are processed. Those are just a couple examples, and when you're reading your labels, if it has ingredients in there that you can't pronounce, you don't want them. Like peanut butter should only have peanuts and maybe salt. You don't need all the other stuff. So those are just some of the helpful hints. But what you want to do is get your food as unprocessed as possible, as close to nature as possible, and farmers markets are good. Those type of things.
I have one quick question. Does anyone happen to know what insecticide or what insect control measures organic farmers use, since they're trying to keep as close as possible to nature? I've understood that a lot of peppers are used in the growing, but I'd like to know more about that.
This doesn't specifically answer your question, and that obviously would be my area of expertise, but I do want to tell you, I'm from Iowa, and so I grew up where they grew corn and soybeans, and they rotated the crops every other year. And one of the things we hated doing when we were kids was husking the corn, because you'd always have those little worms in it, and I don't know if any of you are old enough to also remember that, but if any of you have purchased corn lately in the store, how many of you have seen a worm in it? Never, never, never. So I guess what I'm getting at is, yeah, we don't want a bunch of insects, we didn't like them then, but I'd much rather have an insect in my corn than what I'm eating in my corn now.
I'm an organic farmer, and we've grown several different organic products. We do obviously the dairy products, but we also have organic almonds, and I used to have organic apples. And it was interesting because it's all about the conditions of the environment. It's about the biodiversity of the good and the bad. Just as it is in our gut, it's the good and the bad that keeps you safe, it keeps you well. So as long as you have a propensity of the good, the bad generally don't pick on you too much. So it's about creating habitat or conditions where the good always outweighs the bad. And I could go on all night long, but I'm not going to. But it's very interesting that when we stopped spraying for an antibiotic called agromycin to go after fire blight on our apples, guess what? We stopped having fire blight. It's very interesting. The exact thing that they said was the solution was actually causing the problem because of antibiotic resistance. So it's about promoting good, making sure you have good beneficial bugs, and that you create an environment which they're going to exist and live in and thrive in, and they eat the bad bugs. And you suppress the bad with the good. And you know what? Occasionally you will have a little bug in there, and it increases protein, so go ahead and munch on it. But the bottom line is, we actually select crops that are best for the ecosystem we grow them in. For instance, in Fresno County, almonds are a wonderful thing to grow there. We have a hard shell almond. I have not sprayed them in 13 years. Not one spray ever since they were put in the ground. And that just shows you that you can very successfully grow an organic crop without the pesticides if you watch out the conditions. You don't have a sterile environment with a monoculture of just one crop. You may have 4 or 5 or 6 different crops to make sure you have a habitat that allows the beneficial bacteria or beneficial insects to thrive and grow, therefore having a balanced ecosystem.
Do you ever import any bugs?
Sometimes yes. Sometimes yes.
What other bugs?
Oh, you can have beneficial mites, beneficial wasps. You get all kinds of benefits that come in. And you know what? The beneficials generally seek out the environments where they're going to have some habitat to grow in. And they will find that place where they have some feed. and they'll come in and they'll actually take up a habitat. Because if you don't have a monoculture, that means just one crop growing, you have multiple crops growing there, where you have a habitat, where you have some place for the beneficials to live, you won't need to be spraying the detrimentals, the ones that give you problems. It's about balance. It's a whole different way of addressing agriculture, and it's very pro-earth. It's exactly the same in your gut, by the way. Every ecosystem we have has its own ecosystem, and it's interesting. Even in our dairy creamery operations, we are always concerned about not getting rid of too many bugs, because guess what? Bad ones will take over. We always concern ourselves about the conditions, the terrain of the environment. Any other questions?
Yes. I have the first thing, I'm happy for this initiative. I have a question of how food supplement like PXP work that reverse the problem of the genetic food.
I can answer it very quickly, maybe perhaps down the line here. What's being found, if you look at the wonderful work done at the NIH, the Human Genome Project, is that we have so much bacteria in our bodies, and in our bodies, and on our bodies, that direct the ultimate expression of what we are as human beings. It's critical that we have the good biodiversity of bacteria sharing their genetic information at the cellular level. They cross-talk and communicate. There's a wonderful TED Talk by Dr. Bonnie Basler that talks about how this actually works. But if you start restoring completely in your body the food and the bacteria and the enzymes, all the whole food nutrition, you will start to genetically redirect your body back to its optimal expression. That's my opinion. And I think you can do that. I think we really screwed ourselves up in the last few years by doing, taking these GMOs and this stuff. But my opinion is I think we can correct it, hopefully, quickly. Maybe it's going to take a little time, I don't know. But certainly those that have eaten a whole food nutrition diet have certainly got a good outcome in fairly short order back to something normal.
The fact about gene expression, he's exactly right. They did over 30 years of research where they showed, remember how we were used to be taught that whatever your parents had, that was your gene, and that's probably what you were going to end up with, and we were just destined to have whatever happen to us. And they since have actually proven that it's not our genes, it's not the genes we're born with, it's our gene expression. And we can turn our gene expression on and off by our lifestyle choices. And it's what we eat. Now, you mentioned supplementation. I personally believe that with what we have going on right now with our food supply, it's almost impossible for somebody to get everything they need without some form of supplementation. And I also believe that you have to be really careful what types of supplementation you use. There are some things out there that I have clients bring in, and when I have them come in, I have them bring in their basket of whatever they bring, and some of it's a big basket. And some of them are actually harmful to them. And people, you hear something and you don't really know what, they're doing the best they can, and they don't really know what's working for them and what's not. So find somebody who's really knowledgeable and will specifically check things on you specifically, because you want to be able to reverse your gene expression to a more youthful gene expression. And that's what the whole, in my opinion, the whole anti-aging thing should be about. It shouldn't be about, are we taking this medication, this hormone, this type of thing, but are we eating the foods and living the lifestyle that's going to keep our gene expression to a more youthful gene expression.
So the question I have is actually a comment that I've got. I can't reach that. Can everybody hear me? One comment about Mark is what you talked about the NIH project is the microbiome project, which we were actually indirectly involved with some of that work. So what you're talking about is about the gene fluidity of the microbiome. What bugs do that we can't do is share genes. And what they've shown is that 30% of the genes in bugs are shared. So two bugs, they don't share genes. 30% of their genes they can transfer to one another, which we can't do. So if there's a resistance issue coming up, that's exactly how they can fight the resistance. The other question I actually have is regarding farming. So a farmer like you that does organic farming, how long does it take to get certified as an organic farmer? And
it's a one-year mandatory transition. Basically, it's a regulatory protocol where if that ground has not been sprayed or had any kind of artificial listed practices done on it for 3 years, and you list that acreage into the USDA organic program, then 1 year later you can be certified organic. If it's had a banned practice or pesticide, then it takes a full 3 years and a day to become certified organic. During that period of time, you can actually do what's called transition or transition sales, but they're not organic, they're transition, and there's less and less of that around now. But it takes 3 years, or like I said, there's the alternate 1 year if you've had 3 years of history. That's the best I understand about it.
Maybe put that more CCOF and USDA.
Yeah, well, there's USDA is the certification agency for the government, but they subcontract the services for inspection to CCOF, California Certifiers, Organic Tilth, Oregon Tilth. There's different QAI. There's different organizations that actually do the actual inspections to enforce the program.
That's annual.
That's annual, correct.
My question is about what Phil was implying, that it's all about money. It's all about money and economics. But one of the doctors in the film said that it's also about greater control over the food supply, over the food chain. And it was not discussed any further. Could you please elaborate on that?
Oh, I would love to elaborate on that. Being from Iowa, I grew up watching the transition happen. In that when I grew up, all the farmers, they place along the highway the signs of what seed they're planting. And I honestly thought Monsanto was a seed company. I had no idea they were a chemical company. I had no idea until I really got involved in this, because you saw Monsanto seeds. And what's happened is, years ago when I grew up, most of the farmers were, little small farmers. I mean, my aunt and uncle were farmers. Everyone was doing it. That's just what everybody was. But what has happened is, once Monsanto started introducing their genetically modified seeds, if some of those seeds happen to fall into a farmer's field, blow out into a farmer's field or whatever, you would think that it would be Monsanto's responsibility to keep their seed contained, but the courts have determined it's the farmer's responsibility. And so when Monsanto, and they actually go into farmers' fields and test their seeds and say, if you have Monsanto seed on your farm, you need to start paying us our royalties. And what's even worse is, not only do you have to, and the courts have legally upheld this, they have to not only pay Monsanto their royalties, but the other thing that they sign when they use Monsanto seed is they're not allowed to save seed. Do you know how big that is? I mean, when you see the picture of an American farm, you always see those silos. That's what the silos are for. The farmers will take their seeds and they'll store them in the silo for the next year so they have seed to plant. If farmers are not allowed to save seed, that makes them absolutely dependent on wherever they get their seed from to go back there next year. And if they do get caught saving seed, they will be sued. And if you looked at how much has been donated by Monsanto, for example, in this campaign, I think it's like over $7 million. For them to go, as a company that size, to go against a family farmer that can hardly come up with $20,000 to pay their attorney, they have to settle, they have no choice. And so it is becoming a real big issue, because if you think about corn, you know how corn is pollinated. When it cross-pollinates, it contaminates other corn crops. So this isn't just a little issue, and it will snowball. And they did touch just briefly on the fact that that was Monsanto's goal, is to own and have all of the seeds sold from their company. And unless we do something grassroots, we're not going to be able to stop that, because clearly our government isn't looking to stop it in any way, shape, or form. I'm so glad you asked that question because I'm really adamant about it.
So actually it just can produce like a slavery type of thing throughout the world.
Well, they are really trying to promote it throughout the world, and some of the other countries aren't allowing it in. But like for example, Mexico, it has started to invade some of the Mexican corn crops because, and that's their main source. You know, maize is it's from Mexico. What can I say? But when we ship through the free trade agreement down to Mexico some of our GMO corn, they don't know it's GMO. It's not like it's printed on each little kernel. They have no way of knowing it's GMO. So what do when they have corn? They plant it. So now they're having the GMO corn starting to grow places where it was never intended to be. So that's, as this, you know, that's why he commented, you know, let the genie out of the box or the genes out of the box. Well, that's what they're referring to. So it's an issue from us from a health standpoint, definitely. But yeah, it's an issue from a monetary and a lifestyle standpoint as well.
My question is,
I was just going to add that, again, there's so much importance into what decisions we're making every day, not only as to what restaurants we're choosing to eat at, and also what products we're pulling off the shelf and purchasing at our local markets, but it's also important to look into how we can support farmers that come into our area and serve our local needs at farmers markets. And even seeing within ourselves the possibility of planting some food in our gardens if you have access to land, and if you don't have access to land, figure out how you can grow maybe some herbs at least and see what it takes to grow one plant and incorporate that into your diet. An excellent example of many approaches to how to do this at home is at the Huntington Library in San Marino, not too far from here in Glendale, and they have different examples of what you can do at home, whether it's planting in ground or you're planting in containers, and they're very knowledgeable there, and it's a great resource to go and visit and learn something about if that's something that you have not grown with. And just quickly to add on to Auda's talk on fermentation, how it benefits our body and diversity, the ability to save seed is an act of preservation to the biodiversity that exists in nature. And year after year and over the decades and hundreds of years, our own farmers have developed varieties that have adapted to each specific region throughout the world. And us being in the Mediterranean climate, their plants are appropriate for what resources we have. So there's a limited availability of what's available out there. Then we're limited to seeds that come from other areas of the country or around the world, and we'll have to increase the inputs of what's outside of our own energies. And what I'm trying to say with that is external energy that we're bringing in, more water, because it's adapted to a different region. Back to the fermentation, there's a great local resource where you can learn more about how to ferment your own foods and gain some skills in the kitchen. It's called Culture Club 101, and it's located in Pasadena. They also have a small market retail area in their operation where you may go in and purchase living foods, including Mark's Dairy. And it's a great resource where you can learn. They allow you to volunteer, and even if you have no background in any culinary art, you can go and learn from their chefs, and they'll teach you how to prepare your food at home, and it's living, fermented food.
Your body will crave that food, by the way. Watch out, it's addictive. Seriously.
So there are lots of ways to obtain seeds that are non-GMO and organic. One of them is Baker Creek. I brought some seed with me today, and if you garden or plan to garden or know anyone who gardens has some tomato seed with me, I'm happy to share that with you. Baker Creek is a company that is very active in this issue. They have, this year is the second expo that they've thrown, the Heirloom Expo, and they're showing the world what is available in the traditions of farmers that have preserved all these diverse crops. That is one company where you may purchase seeds, and their local retail stores where you may purchase non-GMO organic seeds. Just talk to me after the panel, and I can give you more companies where you may purchase them, and some things going on in Los Angeles where there are networks of seed savers that are preserving seeds adapted in our area in Los Angeles.
We can only take up a couple of more questions.
I have the microphone.
Yeah.
I regularly check the labels when I buy produce, and recently discovered a label starting with 3, 4, 8, 9, and 3 I discovered is the radiated food, and the 9 is organic, and the 4 is conventional, and 8 is GMO, but I rarely see 8. My problem is sometimes the same apples that I want to buy have 3 and 4. I call and ask these people, so is this 3 or 4? And they say, they don't even know what 3 or 4 means. And I say 3 means it's radiated, it's gamma rays to increase the shelf life, and 4 is conventional. At least I want conventional, not organic. And they don't know. So first, this labeling, it seems like you can still be confused. Somebody puts 3 or 4 or 9, and you buy an apple with 9, thinking it's organic, and it's not. So I don't know if there's any way to protect yourself from this. And regarding meat, I see Whole Foods now selling 5 different levels, level 1 to level 5, and the conditions and all that. And suddenly they sell a meat that is 5 but non-organic. I ask, why is this not organic? They say the farmer doesn't have the money to get certified, but this is level 5. So if
answer to the first part of the question, what I found out is those numbers, in the SKU number, whatever, they're not for our purposes. They're for internal purposes. And although some of them, yes, 9 may mean, not genetically modified, the other one is genetically modified, 3 is irradiated. That's not what labeling is going to be doing, the balance. If we're going to be asking for labeling, it's going to be actually putting on there where if there's some ingredients in there that's genetically modified, it's going to mention that. So as far as I know, from what I understand, it's not the numbers that's going to dictate whether they're genetically modified. They're going to have to put it on there, on the list of ingredients, whether the list includes that or not. Does it speak to the second part?
I've read on the Huffington Post through Jeffrey Smith's resources online that what you said is exactly that. It's for internal purposes, and it doesn't reflect whether produce is GMO or not. There are no requirements that mandates corporations to say this GMO or not. And again, that's why there's such a value in this initiative that was successful and is now on the ballot for November to ask California to require the labeling of GMO.